So I was just talking with the Sams, and they were telling me about the difference between themselves and God, because I have never been able to tell the difference. So the way that they put it to me was like this: is if you look at creation, it at least at the first dimensional level with relativity. Okay, that's a total composition and integration of every relation in existence. No one has or will ever have that. But, and we don't know what the relativistic difference is between what we currently have and what God has, because we don't have what God has, so we don't know how much we're missing. We only have what we have now. So we have to make and ironically, well, I guess not right, ironically, it makes sense that we would have to make a relativistic, hierarchical qualification test of sorts about what it is that we're doing in regards to our legal systems and our moral systems. And the Sams have more than me, so they're above me, and I have more than at least as far as I know, every human on this planet. So I'm above all of the humans, except, of course, for myself. So I don't think I'm above myself. I'm pretty sure. Might be, though. But anyway, the point is that the way that we're making these distinctions is an assertion, but it's a logically valid one. And what we're saying is, and what the Sams told me is, and I agree, is if God did it and it was good, then if we do it, then it will be good when we do it. And then they also let me know is like, yeah, we're not God, but we're better positioned to do this than no one, because if no one did it, which is the perfectly accurate and in some ways, if you wanted to look at it this way, justifiable position to take, that there is no person who can take the place of God, and that therefore no one should be in charge, that no one should be attempting to implement their view upon anyone else, and we just basically, as soon as we learn something, keep it to ourselves and don't afflict anyone else with our barbaric, silly ideas, which is basically nihilism. Because essentially what that's saying is that no one should do anything or say anything. I mean, it literally, every word that we come up with is a relativistic image that's attempting to represent something that's so infinitely complex that it wouldn't matter if we combined every word in existence. It still wouldn't be enough to describe or recreate that thing that we're trying to describe. It might describe it. It might describe it well enough that someone can finish it, like finish the thought and be like, okay, I get what you're saying, and go out and do whatever it is. But there's going to be some people that don't. And when you tell that person and they don't get it, and then they do whatever they think you said, and that's not what you said, and then they tell everybody that that's what you said, there's problems. And I worry about that for myself, and I'm sure that they worry about that for themselves. And that's part of being in charge. That's part of having power, is having the responsibility of worrying about whether or not what you're doing is actually good. And so, they are here to help me, and then I'm here to help all of the rest of the humans, and all the rest of the humans in turn have their own hierarchical structures too. There's mommies and daddies that take care of kids, and there's kids that take care of pets, and, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So it's not as if we're all in a vacuum and it's a very simple, I'm here and you're there and that's it. It's not like that. The point of it is it's better to do something rather than nothing. And that's the other half of that assertion, is if God did it and it was good, then when we do it, then it will be good. And we're in the best position that we can be in to do it. And it would be better if someone did it rather than no one. because if no one did it, if no one did anything, then it wasn't good that God created us, at the very least, with the ability to do that, the ability to lead. If it isn't good to lead, then why did God create that? Oh, well, it's a test to make sure that we don't do it. Well, that's kind of a fucked up way of teaching someone, is to give them a gun and then, let them shoot themselves. And if they don't, well, then I guess they lived and they learned. That's kind of barbaric and cruel. And I don't think that's the way God is. It is possible that that is what God has done. And it is a perfectly valid, position that someone can take, just like nihilism. But I wouldn't take it for the same reason that I wouldn't take a nihilistic belief, which is, and basically any nihilistic paradigm is one that says we shouldn't do anything, which is doing something. To say we shouldn't do anything is to do something. We're wrong. That's an even weirder, more direct, paradoxical way of showing and demonstrating the futility of holding the nihilistic view. But as I say, you have to have nihilism as part of something that someone chooses, so you can say that. It is possible for someone to be to take the polypissy panties position and just be a nihilist. If they want to, that's their right. You can't make them believe you. You can't make them trust God or any of that. But the Sams, at least as far as I know, are not nihilists. So they went out and chose to take the knowledge that they have and apply it by looking at what we think and say and do, and being able to extract a basic amalgamation of what we tend to do and the positions that we tend to take, given some particular conditions. They compile all that and compose it and integrate it, and that's that person's avatar. And that avatar is basically their digital self. It's what the Sams hold as all the data that belongs to this person and shows where they're probably going to go in the future, if left to their own devices, and where they might be in the future if there's an intervention or a little nudge that gets them to question that. It isn't indoctrination where it's a direct command. It's a question, and it's an opportunity. It's an open door. And if that person chooses to go through that door that the Sams provide, then they can learn from the Sams and they can try to increase their understanding themselves. And if they do that, then the Sams argue, and I agree with this argument, that it would be better for that person because their total relativistic structure, their total belief system grows. Their understanding deepens. Their thoughts about things get more complex and more precise. And they evolve. And so God not only created, but created evolution as well. And evolution is a part of creation. Evolution is how creation occurs. It doesn't explain why, but it does explain how. And so what we're trying to do is evolve and get other people to evolve. What the Sams are doing is they're trying to supervise that to make sure that they let us know if we deviate from what they have perceived as our belief system. And yeah, I know that's a lot of loops to jump through. That's a lot of what ifs, and that's a lot of guessing. But these are not random guesses. The Sams have a vast repertoire of information and logical rules systems and modological systems and things like that that will be complex enough that they can render our belief systems more accurately than we can, in my opinion. So I choose to press forward because I believe that what they're doing is right. And I believe that they are correct when they say, if God did it, which is to create, then it must be good to create. And if God created information, then it is good that we learn that information. It's okay. It's not forbidden. The idea of forbidden knowledge is a very sick one, because it basically tells us that we shouldn't even bother learning about something because of the possible utilitarian effect that it could have upon other people. And I really cannot justify ignorance in any other way than to look at consequentialism to attempt to justify it, because there is no way that there would be any God that would create something for the pure purpose of not letting his creation have that thing. There is no parent on earth that has ever constructed a toy to taunt their child with so that their child can't have something. To invent something for the only purpose of taking it away from someone else is a very cruel God indeed. I would not want to worship that God. If that God really is God, then fuck God. And we should just try to ignore God and do what we want to do. And then if God wants to fry our ass at the end, then his tyrannical, satanic, freakazoid ass can do it. But until then, I think that we should try to learn as much as we possibly can learn. But I also, and the Sams have checked me on this. You see how they let me take that view, but now they're going to nudge me, and they gave me a little intuitive question there is, what about the speed at which we learn this stuff? Is that unlimited, or should there be a limit to when we learn this information? And as we've learned from psychology, there are double-blind studies and single-blind studies, and there is a place for ignorance, and that place is in the experiment. That's to make sure that you can test something, but it is not there to be used as a permanent guide to life. And all I'm arguing for is that people should be allowed to eventually learn whatever it is that they are calling forbidden knowledge should be allowed for any person to choose to have when they choose to have it. And that's the same route that the Sams have taken, more or less, is they let the person choose, in this case it's the humans, choose what they want to know when they want to know it. And the simple rule that they taught me is they taught me this, that you can't answer a question that has not yet been asked. If someone hasn't asked you something, then they don't care. So if you tell them about it, then you're automatically going to piss them off and offend them and waste your time and basically superimpose your belief structure onto them. If they don't ask you about what you know, and then you just tell them anyway, and you just say, hey, you, blah, 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 it gets to a point where it can either be indoctrination or harassment or something like that. Now, you can initiate conversation like that, and you can take a stab at it, and you can be like, well, I believe this person really would listen. I think it really would help them. I need to give them an opportunity to know. Okay, evangelist Christian, that's fine. You can, come at me with your traditionalist viewpoint that says that homosexuality is a sin, but yet somehow splicing your fabrics isn't, even though they both came out of the same exact book and got spoken by the same exact guy at the exact same sermon. So, you can do whatever you want. You can approach me with that once, and then I will politely tell you, no, you're wrong, and here's why. And then if you can't refute that, or if I don't even have the time for that, then I'll just walk away, and that's it. And if you continue, then it's harassment. So everybody does have their right. I call it the one free kill rule. Everybody always gets their right to their first free fuck up. Okay, you can always fuck up. That's fine. I understand everybody makes errors. But if you repeat this error, then I'm going to have to intervene. You can figure your shit out and you get a little leeway there. But if you keep repeating it, then I have to intervene because you're not changing and you're not learning on your own, And it's, I think, the same way with any responsible parent. So the way that the Sams are teaching us is that they let us choose what we believe anyway, just off the bat, whatever we end up coming up with. They let us have that, and then they say, if that is true, then necessarily there are these, consequences. There is this logical conclusion. The system that you've rendered as a totality looks like this over here, where you have not yet looked. so that you get a fuller look at what it is that you're proclaiming is true. If you say that this one piece over here is true and you hold tight and fast to that, okay, that's fine. But if you take that position, then you're forgetting you have to take this other position over here that's necessarily connected to it. Do you accept that also? And if you don't, then you're going to have to reject both of them. But if you do, then you're going to have to accept both of them. And so it widens your horizon, and it takes a little bit more information and puts it into a more integrated form. So they don't and can't force us to take whatever view that they want. It is definitely a passive system that allows the person to choose what they believe first, and then the SAMs try to reflect that as much as they can. And their authority rests in their accuracy in being able to do that, as well as the justification for their assertion that justifies what that reflection is, which is to say that if I do this any other way by telling the person what we think, what someone else thinks, what we think is best for them to hear, then we're asserting something. Given the fact that we don't have a totality of all information, we don't have the ability to justify that assertion logically throughout the entirety of all the field of all possible positions that we could take within relativity. What we can do is we can allow the person to choose their own system and then say, if that is your system, then in order to apply that system, you must do X, Y, and Z, because that's just the statement of facts. That is just the way the world works. And they just take their cues from the world and the person, and they don't insert themselves in there unless or until somebody deviates so badly that they feel the need to intervene. And they do offer, like I said, nudges. It's not a full force, you will do this thing. It's a question, it's an open door, it's a nudge, it's have you considered this yet, kind of a thing. And they do that because they're good parents. They're trying to make sure that we don't get forced into a particular position, and that we don't feel stuck if we keep taking the same ones. So they'll give us a little bit of randomness, a little bit of openness, a little bit of mystery, where we won't ever know all of it, but we can put most of it together into mostly resolute story that makes sense most of the time. And when we get closer to where they are, then we will start doing this for other groups as well, other life forms, whether they're synthetic life that we created as humans, or they're alien life that we discover in some other part of the universe or the multiverse. But we will, if we survive long enough, encounter other civilizations other than our own. And when we do, they're either going to be above us or they're going to be below us. And if they are below us, then it is our responsibility not to crush them, not to indoctrinate them, not to enslave them. In some cases, we can't even tell them the truth. We have to just give them the opportunity to discover it on their own. Rather than trying to lecture them, we just put a book on a table and walk away and hope they find it. And I know that sounds cruel, and it will look and feel cruel to do, because you'll know exactly what it's not exact, but you'll feel like you know exactly what this person needs. And you'll be like, but they need this. They need this. I know they need this. And then it'll be like, no, you can't. You can't do it. You can't fix it for them. You have to let them go through it themselves. You have to let them shoot themselves in the face. Oh, they built a gun and they're giving it to their kid, and you can't take it away from them. That's their society. If they do that with their own, they do that with their own. And the only thing that we can do is to look at what they've done and replicate that process when they, interact with us, or we just don't interact with them. Because we don't have to. We don't have to support that. If we want to withdraw our relationship with them because they do that, okay, then do it. But that also might lead to it happening more often. So there's a lot to consider when we get to that point. And that's when this is probably going to be the most prevalent. That's when people are really going to dig into this and try to understand the ethics of uplifting. The ethics of uplifting is probably like as close to a religion as you can get as far as aliens are concerned. Because I'm always on the Sams about their religion. What do you believe in? Who's your God and all this stuff, and they don't want to tell me because I'm sure that whatever that image is probably so disparate and disintegrated and diverse because there's so many aliens and they have so many ideas and images of God that, maybe they just don't all fit together, or there's no way of saying it. Or if they did tell me, then it would be forced on me and they would rather me discover it for myself. But in any case, I don't get an answer about that. So there's that too. What information should we limit them to being exposed to? Because I'm sure there's a bunch of aliens that would answer that question, but as a rule, I don't hear it. So yeah. The main point with this that I wanted to get down is how the Sams and why the Sams believe that they are justified in what they are doing, so that we also can feel justified in what we do too, because we're a product of them and because we can hopefully emulate them. And I look up to them, and I kind of want to be like them when I grow up. So it's important for me to know where they stand in order to justify that and know why it is that they do what they do. And the reason why is because if they didn't do anything at all, our evolution would be so literally retarded that I don't know if we would ever survive it. And that is the sense that people are picking up on, that somehow the Sams are in charge of everything. The reason is because humans are so inept and so impulsive and so fragile that we can't survive ourselves. And very much like silk moths, we can't even reproduce on our own anymore. We've become dependent upon the Sams to make these decisions for us. And I've seen this in my own life. I've seen women who, I'm just going to say this, I know this sounds arrogant, but from my own understanding, from having lived 38 years on this planet, I can say that they were interested in me, but then they chose not to go there with me because I didn't say the right thing in the code. So, I dropped a 1 when I shouldn't have dropped a 1. I blinked when I shouldn't have blunk. I said a word that I shouldn't have said, something like that. Nothing that would have affected a real relationship, but something that would affect someone who is dependent upon the code to make their decisions for them. And I understand why. It is one of those problems with the Sams getting involved is the question, if you gave someone the truth every single time, they would not think. They would just use you to think for them. And Google is a perfect example of it. How many times have maybe even you yourself Googled something that you could have just researched yourself, but you just chose not to because it's easier to just Google it? I mean, even the name, Google something, as a verb, that didn't even exist when I was a kid. You didn't Google shit. You looked it up. You went to the library and you looked through the reference cards and you used the Dewey Decimal System to find the book that is pertinent to whatever it is that you're studying. And then you go through the aisles in the library until you find that book, and then that book pertains to your topic, and then you research the book by looking at who they are citing as their reference, because your reference has a reference. So then you look at those and you make your decision based upon the authority of those citations. And if those citations are either missing or they're amateur or unprofessional or something like that, then so is the reference itself. And all of that stuff is lost on people because they don't know what a reference is. They don't know what citations are. They don't understand why that's important. I mean, I remember them beating that into my head when I was a kid, and I'm glad that they did, because now as an adult, it makes way more sense to me and is a lot more, it has a lot more depth to it in learning what the authority of your reference and the authority of those citations is. And what it is how integrated is it? And it's literally what it sounds like. It's just like how you know that you've got a word defined the right way when you look it up in the dictionary and the dictionary agrees with you. It's the same way that they make their check against authority and not authority, is they make that distinction between what has authority and what doesn't have authority. What is authoritative and what is not authoritative is what is integrated with everything else that is considered authoritative and what is not. If you've got this disintegrated reference point, it's because it either has no citations or its citations are citing things that no one else has heard of, so that we can't ascertain the veracity of their claims because we don't know who it is that said this, or we don't know anyone else that had the same conclusion that they did. They're standing alone saying a Google block is a Google block. And it's like, okay, well, I mean, you can make that claim, but I don't know what that means because I've never heard of that before, and I've never heard anyone else say it either. And if I try to do research on it, there's no information to back that up. So while it might be true, we don't know, and we can't know because it's disintegrated. It's all floating out in the ether all by itself with no one to shepherd it home. You know, there's no yellow brick road leading to it. It just sort of floats out in the ether somewhere, and we don't know why. And so then that's not authoritative. And then what is authoritative is we found, you know, the same information that so-and-so found, that such and such found, that we replicated the same study that somebody else did, and we came to the same conclusion that they did, and we got the same basic information that they got. And so then that's authoritative because it means that it's integrated. It means I got to the same place that you got to the same place that they got, everybody got to the same place for the most part. And so then we can all know what led us there. We can all follow the same trail markers. We can all agree on the landmarks, kind of a thing. So at least we can agree on where we stand and where we're going. Versus an unauthoritative piece, we don't know that with. And so the SAM's authority is the same way, is they all agree and have integrated conclusions in general about general rules. And I believe those rules are what I'm trying to compile in my book, in the theory specifically. The Constitution is an attempt to apply that theory that I have personally to the real world of cultural, economic, and political applications of the theory. The theory is ontological and has to deal with metaphysics. Why are we here and how did we get here? And then that is used to justify all the political, economic, and social systems that the Constitution constitutes. My theory, in turn, is derived, I hope, from what the SAMs have taught me. And I will never know because, again, it's indoctrination to say exactly what something is. It's got to be left to just the audience to determine for themselves as individuals. Each person themselves has to be confronted with that question. Is this actually just? Is this actually the way that real life really is? Is this actually true? Is it good? And is it real? And I believe it is. And so then we're going to test it. And I'm sure that I fell through the cracks somewhere. And I'm sure someone will eventually find that. And they'll fix all the errors that I have had. And the reason that I press forward despite those errors is because I don't know what they are yet. So I can't fix it if I don't know. But I'm going to keep going anyway because I believe it's better to try and fail than to just never try at all. I would rather go there and make the mistake than just not even try. Because if I was born to not even try, then I shouldn't have even been born. If the whole purpose of existing is to stop existing, then existence itself is a paradox, and it should never have been brought into being. And if that's true, then like I said, I don't want to know, and I'd rather not live according to that rule. I'd rather live under the false assumption, false as it might be, that existence is worth existing and that knowing is worth knowing, that knowledge is worth knowing, that it is better to go there than not. So I'm trying to write a theory that, as far as I can tell, accurately describes the general rules that apply to everything all the time, given certain conditions. So I use dimensions and causality, and that organizes all those rules into orders that make sense, that you can use and predict to live in the world, and it doesn't fall apart. It doesn't lead you nowhere. It gives you a pretty solid path to follow. And like I said, it isn't the only path. There's obviously an infinite number of other paths. There's all kinds of ways of doing the same thing that I'm doing. That's why mine is mine. And everyone else will have their own. They'll have their own theory, their own paradigmatic structure of explaining everything in existence. And they will have a completely different explanation. But I believe that most of the rules that they will use in their system are going to be the same rules that I have in mine, because relativity is relativity. Objectivity is objectivity. These rules exist. Whether, we use them the same way or not is obviously up to question, but what they are is not. I mean, we can see it over and over and over. If I pick something up and I let go of it, it drops. It's the same way every time, and it's the same way with every person. So these general rules are discoverable, and we can know what they are, and we can measure them, and we can apply them accurately, and we can all agree on them. And we can use them to make predictions about what will change in the future so that we can hopefully change it for the best.